Welcome to the Programming Lions podcast. Today, Dr. Carole Lieberman joins us, MD and a board-certified Beverly Hills forensic psychiatrist, a best-selling author, a media commentator widely known as America's Psychiatrist. She has served as an expert witness in dozens of high-profile cases, including the Gabby Petito civil trial. She's also recognized as an authority in psychological trauma, terrorism, mass shootings, media, politics, and more. A 3-time Emmy-honored TV host and frequent guest on major news networks, Dr. Lieberman brings a clinical expertise and fearless insight to today's most controversial cultural and political topics. And so we have some spicy questions for her. Let's get into it. Dr. Carole Lieberman, thank you for joining our show today. We're excited to have you on. We got a lot of interesting topics to get into with you. But before we do that, could you give us a little bit about your background, education, what kind of work you've done and currently do?
It's great, first of all, that your kids are on. That's adds a whole new dimension. So let me tell you that when I was 8 years old, that is when I decided that I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
And when I was a teenager, and I decided I wanted to be a doctor because I read a book about the first woman doctor in America and how she was helping people and so on. And then when I was a teenager, I read a book, Freud's, Sigmund Freud. He was the number one psychoanalyst and father of psychoanalysis. And I read one of his books called An Interpretation of Dreams. And that's how I decided I totally connected with that book and what he was saying. And that's how I decided that I wanted to be a psychiatrist.
Okay.
After that, so I went to college and I went to medical school. And then I did some medical sub-internships and internships. And then I did a psychiatry residency at NYU Bellevue in New York.
Okay.
And then when I moved to California, I'm from New York, born and bred. And when I moved to California, I got a master's in public health on top of my MD.
Okay.
And what I do a lot of different things. Of course, I treat patients. I also am a forensic psychiatrist, meaning that I'm like one of the experts that they call in a trial, a criminal trial or a civil trial. And I analyze whoever the person, like if it's the defendant for a criminal case or, whoever the people are involved in that. And I do a lot of television and a lot of radio. I have a host of podcasts, 2 podcasts. One is called Dr. Carol's Couch, and the other is called The Terrorist Therapist Show.
Okay.
And so because when I was going to medical school, when I decided to be a psychiatrist, I didn't just want to be the kind of psychiatrist that sits in the office and sees patient after patient. I wanted to be able to reach more people, to help more people. And so it was always my plan from before I went to medical school to do media, to also talk about these different issues in the media so I could reach more people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the shortest.
Wow. Okay. Well, you've done a lot. That's
wow. I left out.
Yeah.
I left out something important. I've written 4 books. I'm a best-selling and/or award-winning author.
Yeah.
And I was asking about terrorists before we started because my most recent book is called Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, oh my,
Okay.
How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. And what the first half of the book is for grown-ups, to how to talk to kids about terrorism and what to do, different activities to make a child more resilient. And because of the things coming up in the world, notably there are going to be more terror attacks. And then the second half of the book is a children's book. It has pictures of everything you ever wanted to know about terrorism, but were afraid to ask.
Okay.
And, kids really do want to know these things. Parents don't realize necessarily that kids are aware of a lot. And so they really need to express their feelings and to understand why do terrorists want to kill us, that kind of thing.
Right. That would be super interesting. So we'll definitely have to get a copy of that, and we'll drop the link for your books into the description so people can check it out and look at your work there. And and I think we'll have to dive into some of that maybe here in a bit in terms of takes that you might have or advice for parents on how to coach their kids through what's going on in the world. So that is really cool. Okay, well, we've got a lot to get into. So, boys, without further ado, where do you want to start?
So, I'm starting off with this, right? What is your method for kind of like assessing and breaking down social issues that come to you?
Well, yes, you mean things that are going on in the world.
Yeah.
Basically, I was talking about how I decided to be a psychiatrist when I read Freud's interpretation of dreams. In my residency training as a psychiatrist and so on, I have studied more, been supervised by psychoanalysts. And I even went to London, lived in London for a while to study under Anna Freud, Freud's daughter.
Oh,
This was
wow.
right before she died. It was an amazing opportunity, an amazing experience. She was amazing. And so I have the way that I look at my patients, the way that I look at being an expert witness and putting that case into some kind of perspective for jurors, and the way that I look at social issues is all from a psychoanalytic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to understand why things are happening and what impact they will have on people, on the
Mm-hmm.
why people are doing certain things and what impact it will have on the rest of us.
So, what are your thoughts on social contagions?
For the most part, they are bad. So bad social contagions spread faster than good social contagions, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Some examples are on TikTok. The stupid challenges that TikTok has,
Mm.
those things spread like wildfire and they're very dangerous. Things like, I know you two are too smart to fall for any of these challenges, but you probably have seen them. There was a challenge about licking toilet seats. You're supposed to do these things and then take
Oh,
video of it or photos of it and post it online or post it on TikTok. And so licking toilet seats, doing a thing where you sort of try to strangle yourself, choke yourself, and then you're supposed to stop before you actually die. It's very dangerous because you can't necessarily stop yourself before you've already been made unconscious and then you die. Oh, there have been a number of cases, maybe you've heard about these in the news, where children or teenagers, it's not just little kids, it's like even teenagers do these things to get attention on TikTok or on other social media, and they've died.
mm-hmm.
I mean, some parents have sued TikTok and so on, but that doesn't bring their child back. So that's an example of bad contagion. What's an example of good contagion?
Mm.
One good contagion, in my opinion, is the excitement that was generated for this election
Yeah,
by Trump,
yeah,
with the MAGA hats and the MAGA rallies and just the MAGA promises of things he was going to do to make America great again.
Mm.
I went to the inauguration, by the way, so I
Okay,
obviously am a big Trump
yeah,
fan. The reason why it was good was because the country was really going downhill during the Biden years, and lots of people were very depressed. There were polls that measured how the country was feeling.
mm-hmm.
And the polls showed that most people were depressed, were thinking that the
Yeah,
country was going in the wrong direction. And
yeah,
so the reason why I say it was good contagion was because it was really a lift for the country.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Well,
Wh-
even like continuing from that, like depression or something, I think it's like PEW or Pew. Studies have shown that liberals are most likely to suffer from like a mental health and low happiness. Like, why and basically how can you explain this?
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you've seen this. I think a Pew Research study was done, and it showed pretty dominant, like that
Liberals
liberals,
are going to be
and
more
in
like,
particular liberal women, are less happy, have higher mental health issues than conservative women. How do you unpack that?
It's interesting that liberal women are having a lot of trouble finding boyfriends and
Mm-hmm.
husbands because, like, on the dating apps or even just in real life, if they meet somebody and they find out that the person is a Republican or likes Trump, they don't want to go out with him. They have
Yeah.
run out of men to date.
Right.
Liberal females are angry. It's hard to they're just not happy with themselves and with life.
Mm-hmm.
They are typically people who are the protesters.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who knocked down the the statues, for example. They're
Or
the
paint a
ones.
swastika on your Tesla.
Yes, or painted, or were part of the protests for BLM,
Mm.
Black Lives Matter. They're activists. Now, it's good to be an activist in a positive way, but
Mhm.
they are mostly activists in a tear down America kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is, that makes them unhappy. In other words, they kind of have to be angry and unhappy to do protests and to
Yeah.
do all kinds of things against America. I don't know
Yeah.
if you boys are familiar with Norman Rockwell. He was a painter,
Oh.
and he painted, if not, your father will show you some paintings that he did. He was a very famous painter, and he painted primarily scenes of Americana, of America in the good days,
Mhm.
in the 50s, in the 40s. I don't remember the exact years, but it was, around that time. So there would be pictures, paintings of fathers taking their sons fishing, for example, or mothers cooking with their daughters, or kids sitting at an ice cream stand, in a candy store. I don't think we have many candy stores these days. There were all these positive kinds of families sitting around Thanksgiving dinner, these
Mhm.
positive kinds of things that were the backbone of America. That is what being an American was. Lots of pictures of the flag, all of that.
Yeah.
And so that there used to be at least one, if not more, paintings of Norman Rockwell in the White House. And Biden took down the painting or paintings
Yeah.
and put up, I don't remember what, like a picture of himself or something, but it was a very symbolic move because he was taking down, he didn't want us to remember America in that good way. And so he replaced it with it doesn't matter what he replaced it with. It's just that he took down these paintings so that we wouldn't remember what America was in its best days.
Right.
And we wouldn't want to have that again.
Right.
So, I thought
It's
that
kind of
was
like
very,
erasing
exactly.
erasing parts of history. It's sort of Orwellian.
Yes, yes.
Social contagions, from a psychiatric view, in your experience, I have to ask about Trump Derangement Syndrome. Is it real, and can it be treated?
Funny you should ask. What a coincidence. I am in the process. I am finishing off my proposal for Trump Derangement Syndrome to be included in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that the American Psychiatric Society, American Psychiatric Association, puts out every 5 years or so. We've known about you. I'm sure you guys have heard about Trump Derangement Syndrome.
Yes.
We experience
Yes.
it every day too. Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
So, but it was around when Trump was president the first time. Okay.
Right.
But now it's a lot worse. So I was talking about Trump Derangement Syndrome in sort of a general way back when he was first president.
Uh-huh.
But now it is much worse. And I will tell you my definition. Trump Derangement Syndrome is an irrational, quasi-psychotic hatred of anything Trump, resulting in rage and over-the-top efforts to destroy him and his work.
You wrote a whole definition on it?
You wrote that?
Yes.
That's pretty good. That should be in the dictionary.
Yeah. That seems...
Yes.
Well, we might have a little bias because we feel like we've been on the receiving end of Trump Derangement Syndrome because we espouse a lot of conservative and patriotic values on our channel, and we were advocates for Trump during the election and today. But and he's not perfect, but it is wild to me. You don't even have to say anything about Trump. You'd be talking about a policy, the border. How do we secure the border? And then they'll say, "Hey, did you hear about Trump? Trump wants to date his daughter." And I'm just like, "What? Like, how did we get there? Like, how did we get there?"
Yeah.
And so when you say like quasi-psychotic, is that an example where people will bring Trump up where he's not even in the conversation?
Well, I'll tell you. I actually divided it into mild, moderate, and severe cases.
Oh my God.
Oh my.
This is amazing. Okay.
A mild case is a person who reels at the mention of Trump's name with a need to speak up with criticisms and expletives, curse words, yelling or throwing something at the TV when Trump appears, stammering.
This is mild?
This is mild. Seems
Okay. I can't wait to hear severe.
Yes, right, the major. Stammering when asked what's not to like about Trump, and an inability to come up with anything that makes reasonable sense.
Mm.
Inability
Yeah.
to be able to, that's kind of like what you were talking about, and here's another description of that. Inability to be able to state what policy is objectionable or why, deflecting instead with statements like, oh, you know, he's just awful,
Mm-hmm.
and TikTok rants. So an example of somebody with a mild case, and I've been kind of generous with this, is the ladies of The View.
Oh.
You know, who are
Oh,
always
man. We're familiar. We're familiar.
who are
Mhm.
always putting Trump down.
Yeah.
So a moderate case
Oh, here we go.
is someone who, in addition to those symptoms of a mild case, also have these. One's life has been overtaken by TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome, interfering with work, family, other relationships, and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Being
Yeah.
unable to distinguish between what one doesn't like about Trump's policies from what one doesn't like about him personally.
Mm-hmm.
Being unable to calm oneself to prevent lashing out verbally and or physically against supporters of the president.
That's
Engaging
true.
Yeah.
engaging in actions to protest against Trump, such as joining marches, writing op-eds against him, or giving speeches and interviews against him. Threatening, following, or assaulting people who wear MAGA hats.
Mm-hmm.
Any of that happen? Or other MAGA clothing, or carry MAGA collectibles. And committing road rage upon seeing a Trump bumper sticker on a vehicle.
Yeah.
So an example of this, maybe you heard this, it was in the news. There was a woman on the subway in New York who saw a young man in a MAGA hat, and she started calling him a racist.
Yeah.
He wasn't Caucasian. He was saying to her, how could I be a racist? You know, it wasn't clear really what race he was, but not white. And so it is not likely that he would be a racist. So she chased him off. She was yelling at him, "You're a racist, you're a racist." She was saying all kinds of mean things to him, and she chased him off the train, the subway, and she ran after him on the platform. She was trying to grab the hat, and she fell on her face.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in the New York Post, and it's online
Yeah.
in a lot of places.
Wow.
Okay, a major case.
All right, here we
Oh,
go.
boy.
Oh, here we go.
In addition to the mild and moderate symptoms, someone
Okay.
with a major case quits one's job or leaves one's family to work full-time trying to stop Trump.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know a few of those. Okay.
Leaving the U.S. in protest of Trump and
Yep.
establishing residence in another country. Doing something illegal to try to stop Trump, such as to bribe a judge to stop one of his executive orders. Threatening a major figure in Trump's administration up close and personal. So, of course, Elon Musk and also J.D. Vance, pro-Ukrainian people right after Zelensky was at the White House. They went after J.D. Vance. He was with his daughter, and they were shouting things at him. And his daughter was like 3 years old, and she was very terrified.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Attacking someone's personal Tesla, a Tesla showroom or manufacturing facility by vandalism, arson, gunshots, Molotov cocktails, or the like, because Elon Musk, Tesla's co-founder and CEO, has been appointed by Trump to head Doge.
Mm-hmm.
Doxing Trump supporters, you know what doxing is, putting people
Oh,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
that happened to us.
Yep. Happened to us.
It
Yeah.
happened to you.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
You'll have to, I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah.
So doxing, putting someone's personal information online with their address and all that.
Yeah.
And then next comes swatting, you know, where they call the police and say some crime is happening at your house, a violent crime. And then the police come with their guns. And it's obviously a very dangerous situation. The person inside the house could be killed and the police could be killed.
Yeah.
And then fantasizing about harming Trump oneself, joining a nefarious group plotting harm to Trump, or arranging for someone else to harm Trump, even though knowing that one's punishment would be severe. And so an example of this is Rosie O'Donnell and Ellen DeGeneres. Rosie O'Donnell moved to Ireland. Ellen DeGeneres moved to England.
Yeah.
Then we have J.D. Vance, I mentioned, attacks on Teslas. The New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who campaigned on the basis of getting Trump.
Yeah, I've debated people about some of this Trump stuff, and imagine like Letitia James campaigned on the slogan that Orange Man bad, I will find crime against Orange Man. That is like that presupposes a crime that they had to go and find. So that's to me like you're a subject of derangement syndrome in that case.
Absolutely. Right? She's the New York Attorney General. She's not just some lawyer or something. She has an obligation, a responsibility to New Yorkers.
Yeah. And to uphold law, order, and so okay. Those are.
I have a question. I have a question, Dad. So we all know Taylor Swift, right? Anyway, Taylor, I heard that before the election, Taylor Swift, I think, said that if Trump won, she was going to leave the country. Yes. But she didn't leave the country.
Yes.
So would that make her mild, or would that still make her major?
Good question. Moderate, I guess. Mild or moderate.
Yeah.
She didn't really do... I mean, she just used her fame to try to get people to not vote for Trump. I guess that might be moderate.
I like the breakdown. So we've been, as we said, we've been subject to a number of what sounds like TDS sufferers, from mild, very common, to moderate, to even severe. Like we've been doxxed, we've been threatened, and death threats, like everything that you could probably imagine for somebody with a social media account, and threats against our children, all because we are supporters of the current administration. And so that's kind of wild. You're actively trying to get this added to the like official documentation for a syndrome. What is that like? Because I imagine the peer review process and getting that in is going to be difficult.
Yes. When I was a psychiatric resident, I was on a committee for one of the DSM-3 diagnoses for schizoaffective schizophrenia, because I had written an article about it. I anticipate, I hadn't looked at the website of the American Psychiatric Association in a long time. And so I did, to try to find out what the proper mechanism is to propose a new diagnosis. And it was very scary. It's all about DEI and all kinds of woke stuff. And it's like, these are supposed to be psychiatrists,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the American Psychological Association. I haven't looked at their website recently, but I know from different articles and so on, they also are woke. Now, these are the two organizations, the main organizations, who are supposed to be looking after the mental health of America, and they have gone crazy.
Yeah.
Same with the AMA also being woke and talking about having... You're not born as a boy or a girl, like trying to, teaching in medical school to not like to that sex isn't determined by your biology. And so it's no wonder that America is just kind of going crazy. If you can't rely on these organizations or these people who, are supposed to be looking out for you, it's just very scary.
Well, this the mental health thing, right? Like you just mentioned. So, do you think it's mostly manufactured versus actually real?
Maybe what you mean, Max, is somebody behind it?
Is someone behind it, or is it just
behind this, like a massive psychological warfare?
Yeah.
Is somebody trying to make us go crazy, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are some people who are very powerful. That's something that I've wondered about too. That how could somebody be? Who is it that is so powerful, or who is an organization that is so powerful that they're able to overcome the otherwise or previously intelligent groups, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists? How were they able to convince them about these things that are so ridiculous?
Right.
We know like George Soros and other people, the World Economic Forum, globalists, perhaps they are involved in this. It's still though, because I used to be very involved in the American Psychiatric Association. I was on all kinds of committees and so on. And back in the day, the people I knew were much smarter than that. And so it's very disturbing. It's a great question, but it's very disturbing because I need to know the answer. Even medical schools, medical schools, it used to be that you'd have to have good grades and good extracurricular activities and all of that stuff. And nowadays they look more at what you do, how much social justice volunteer work you do. Now, if I'm sick in a hospital or anywhere, I want a doctor who has spent his time or her time learning about different illnesses and who was the smartest in the class, not
Right.
the
Yeah.
one who did the most social justice work.
Yeah.
So it's
Or
you
is
know,
it just because like their gender or their race or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, exactly.
So you bring up this interesting point of this drift in higher education, in medical industry, of people being trending in this kind of woke, let's say woke direction. And I can't for the life of me figure out why this is happening, because yes, these are, people that are supposed to be dedicated to science, their craft, and making people better, but they seem to be doing some of the opposite. So I'm curious, like, what happens? Is it groupthink, and is it peer pressure? I just don't understand what happens.
I think part of the part of the problem is the fact that these things started earlier, like in medical school, the people who get chosen to be in medical school over the last, I don't know, however long wokeness has been around. And so that's part of it, that they come into these organizations, wanting to be like that. And the medical schools are teaching classes on wokeness. I mean, classes, they don't call it wokeness, but like classes on DEI or classes on, why isn't trans wonderful and that kind of thing. So it starts earlier. By the time they actually get to be doctors, they've drunk the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. So they've
they
been
believe in
conditioned
all
by
of
the
it.
time that they're
Yes.
into those positions. I think to your point, it didn't happen overnight. This has been a multi-decade process of getting into the
And we should have
institutions.
and we should have recognized it and done something about it sooner.
Yeah.
Banning Dr. Seuss and banning Monopoly, these
Wait,
are
what?
staples of childhood. These I loved and love these
Yeah.
things. And for what reason? I guess Monopoly, because you're not supposed to be capitalist and buy hotels or think about money.
Yeah.
Wait, Monopoly's banned?
There was attempts to shut down Monopoly, and I think the maker of
What?
it, is it Hasbro?
Hasbro, yeah.
Yeah, has had pressure to stop producing it.
But it's such a good game, and we play like all the time.
We play it all. We play it. We enjoy it.
I used to play it all the time with my cousin too when I was growing up. So, yes, these things are
Crazy.
ridiculous. Now, the interesting part to this is, though, that there is beginning to be somewhat of a backlash. There are a lot of people who are anti-woke, who don't believe in this stuff. And so there is beginning to be more. So now that Trump has won, there is more of people are less frightened to come out and say that what things that they like and how they don't like this, but they do like this. And so I think it's going to reverse, which is kind of going to be very interesting, because what about all these people, who have already gone that way, and then most of America is going to be against them.
Maybe that's a good segue back to Trump Derangement Syndrome. Can it be cured?
For mild cases of TDS, you could try in a very gentle way to describe things that Trump has already done that would benefit them, like this particular person. You wouldn't really get into the policies as much as the benefits. Of course, they're going to always have something to say against that, but it's worth trying for a mild case.
Yeah.
Then for all cases, individual psychotherapy. For cases where there are relationship issues, for couples or families, then couples therapy and family therapy. And then for the moderate and major cases, medication along with the therapy.
Wow. Wow.
Medication? Wait, what medication? What
Medication.
medication
Well, yeah,
would it be?
what
Well,
kind of
depending
medication?
upon what other things are associated with it, like there are some other psychiatric symptoms that can be associated with TDS, like anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive behavior, hysteria, paranoia, sociopathy, psychopathy, suicidal thoughts, delusions, loss of touch with reality, mass psychosis,
Lost
anger,
To name a
lost
few.
touch of reality.
yes.
So we can maybe wrap up soon, but as we kind of put a bow on the TDS topic, because this is
Okay.
fascinating, and I'm sure it'll be fascinating
is
to our
funny.
audience. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing in this, because in our opinion, there's some reality to this for sure. But you must be getting a lot of backlash from your colleagues in the community.
Well,
How is
I
that? What is
haven't
that
really
like?
talked about this with my colleagues yet.
Okay.
Okay.
I know there are a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists who are very anti-Trump. There was this woman who did a thing, Duty to Warn. There were organizations when Trump was running the first time, and I think they also came out the second time, and they, said that he was a malignant narcissist, he was dangerous, all of
Yeah.
that. So, yes, so it's very sad.
Wow. You've described a lot of issues that we seem to experience and put some credibility to it in terms of your background in psychiatry. We hope you have some success getting it through the institution and into the I don't know, what would you call it? The accredited
The American
list?
Psychiatric Association.
The American, okay.
And the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual.
Okay. So that would be amazing.
Yes, why don't you bring some of the people on your show who did one of these things to you, and I'll try to cure them.
Yes, we could do that. We could definitely do that. It'll be a tall hill to climb, but we appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I can't wait to read more about the progress that you make on this. Meanwhile, we're going to catch your book on terrorism, which we didn't get a chance to get into deeply today. And with that, we'll call it a wrap. But thanks so much for coming on. Good luck to you. And maybe we'll do another session in a few months when more information breaks about your progress on this. How about that?
Okay, that sounds good.